Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we have a very interesting guest. Now, Alena, you are the Chief Marketing Officer at Ozon Global. And I'll let you explain a little bit about what that is. And we're going to be talking today about trust, and not only in a way that builds our funnel, builds our brand, that builds relationships, but we're going to look at the 90% of the iceberg that's under the water and what happens in terms of like leaks in our funnel because we're not paying attention to building trust in our brands. And I think that's an area that we haven't really uncovered a lot in this podcast. So I'm super excited to be talking about it with you today. But also, I'm going to ask you in a minute to explain a little bit more about your background, because you have a very interesting background, from like a creative theatrical background that you were in, all the way up to you have a job that was literally specifically just talking to customers all the time. And you had such deep learning. You built so much trust that they looked at you, I would say, as not only not a vendor, not even a peer or colleague, but like you got to the point where you were like almost like a teacher. You were instructing them, and you knew so much about their business. It's like a place we would all love to get to. So before we kind of get into the leaks in our funnel from trust, would you mind explaining a little bit more about your background? Then we'll dig in.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I have not so typical background for CMO because I'm not started in some industry and just grown from like some junior marketing person to CMO. I started my career in cultural sphere. I was PR manager in theater, and it was very cool when you are young and you're in this artistic sphere. But then I proceed in advertising agencies from the scratch, from junior account managers. But then I switched my career from like some typical marketing career to, I could say, commercial, but in a very specific way. I worked in a very small group of people in one of the biggest Russian social media, and we were responsible for direct communication with our clients, with CMO, with the vice president of marketing of the biggest companies which could buy ads on Russian market. So we were responsible for some direct communication with these people. We were like one point of contact for these people if they thinking about anything in this corporation. But it was huge corporation. It's not only about social media, it's also gaming, search engineering, and so on. So if they think about anything, like I want to have some specific media with you, it's also our case for Nestle. We were like some person to communicate with. And for me, it helped a lot to understand my target audience because I really know these people. I could say my friends. So a lot of these people still my friends, we still in touch. And it was very interesting period of time when it was like the first year where digital spends exceeded the TV spends in Russia. And it was like very specific year when still a lot of brand manager didn't believe in ads in internet. And we created some special digital days for them with some brainstorming, with some focusing on their needs. And I was so deeply involved in their industries, in their business goals, that like everyone thought that I working only with this industry, but I wasn't. Hadn't any specific industry. I worked together with some big banks, FMCG, some beauty, and some e-commerce as well. And this experience, this 3 years experience, gave me, first of all, my husband, because we met there, and huge understanding of different industries, the huge understanding of B2B audience as a person, not like some abstract. So when I switched to like B2B marketing, I was responsible for branding and communication in B2B business of Yandex, also a very big Russian IT company. And now I'm responsible for international marketing of one of the biggest CIS e-commerce. And now I perceive my audience not only like some description, you know. I try to understand what person is it, like what their needs, what their hobbies, and so on. And it helps me. I think that this experience really helped me to see on my audience, on B2B audience from other perspective.
So much I want to start unpacking our conversation here today, but I'm just going to underscore the importance of a couple of things that you said there. Trust, I mean, it can be one of those words that's like value, trust, and we have to be the trusted advisor. We hear it so often that it loses its impact. But here's the impact that's having in our businesses today. 61% of respondents in the latest LinkedIn Element Trust Barometer think that we're being intentionally misleading. Intentionally. 61% of the B2B buyers, right? Another study showed that 74% of B2B buyers don't believe the customer evidence we present to them. Like, here's how we package up what we do, and this is what we can do for you. And they don't believe it. And in terms of the totem pole, in terms of who's trusted the most and who's trusted the least, salespeople are at the very bottom. And so we wonder why B2B buyers are now waiting longer and longer and longer to want to talk to us, right? This self-service buyer's journey. And by the time they do, guess what? They've already got their top 2 or 3 picked, right? So how do we break into that? It's the lack of trust, right? They're finding credible, reliable information in their peers and online, and they're not looking to us for that, right? That's not a trend we can just ignore. That's not a trend that we could say, hey, you know what? Let's just kind of keep doing things the way we always have. And what you talked about in the relationships and the learning the voice of the customer, the intimate relationship that you had with them, I would love to just ask you as our first question here, how important that is to building trust, that intimacy, that deep understanding of your customer, to create and enhance and build that relationship that turns commercial, right? And you were a commercial officer at one point, in charge of P&L, and like that was a part of your background we didn't even talk about. How important is that intimate relationship with that customer to our overall success?
I think in B2B marketing, it's even more important because you can't just say like in B2C, okay, we upgrade this feature and now it's better. We invented new taste and now you could try new chocolate and your old experience now it isn't valid. In B2B, you need to show some constant experience and to build some constant trust. And it's even important not with one particular person, but it's all a very good communicating society. It's business society. They always communicate with each other. And if you like failed with one, if in my business, for example, in Chinese seller, if you failed with one seller, in 3 hours, all chats of the sellers will know about your failure. That's why it's more important to like build some constant trust. And I'm thinking now that it's very common with my previous experience when I was this one communication point for these people, because we had these relationships, and our business not was constantly good. But when we failed, I was a person who said, yeah, we failed, but I will deal with it. I will help you. Yeah, we did this and this. I was transparent. I described why it happened. And then I said, okay, I understand. We did not great job. Let's do better together. And I think in constant B2B communication, your like brand voice should be this person who said, yeah, we did not great, but to be transparent and not try to say, oh, not you didn't understand us correctly. But yeah, to be open to say, yeah, we did it not right, but we will do this, and this transparency and this ability as a brand voice to accept your own values. I think it's more important in B2B market than in B2C. Yeah.
There's so much to unpack there. I love the idea of transparency because we lose credibility when we know everything. Right? This is like, that's just not the way the world works, right? I had a conversation with a 3-time B2B CMO that came onto the podcast about a year ago. And he said, Steve, the number one piece of content enablement that we created for our sales team is an article that we wrote that was about how we got it so wrong and then what we did. And the sales team was like, we can't use that. But that you're kidding me, right? And it's like, no, really. And built such an authentic relationship from the start because it felt like nobody was being sold to. We were just being honest, right? Which is the opposite of what they're feeling from us today. And so I love that story about, we got to admit, right? We don't get it always wrong. I think it was Bill Gates who said, probably 20 years, 30 years ago at this point, but said he loves hiring people that have failed. Because if you fail, but you still progress throughout your career, it means that you've been able to learn something from that. You've been able to adapt, right? And that's the way the world works. So you also talked in our previous conversation. You talked about the real importance of promise keeping. These all seem like basic things, right? Listen to our customers, right? Build trust, be transparent, keep promises, but it doesn't happen all the time, right? Like what is promise keeping? And you talked about it like as the engine to trust.
I think that the transparency with your customers started with transparency into your team. So when all departments are transparent with each other and understanding what's going on, it's easier to provide this transparency outside the company. Because sometimes marketing person or like some business development person, they could translate something wrong, not because he wants to lie, because it's not transparent for him what's going on with the product, with the plans, with some responsibilities. And I think that transparency outside the company starts with transparency inside the company. And yeah, some basis. Yeah.
It's interesting. I run a podcast in the staffing industry. We talk to a lot of chief people officers, CHROs. We talk to CEOs, chief technology officers about the importance of engagement with the employees of the company. And we actually had a PhD on that for his PhD thesis. He proved this: employee engagement translates to customer engagement that translates into growth for the business. Right. And we all kind of know that innately, but he proved it. And so this idea of transparency internally, we all know private equity companies, VC firms, they invest in people first, the idea second. That idea of transparency and building trust internally to have trust externally, nobody's talked about that on the podcast. Right. And I've interviewed a lot of people. We've had a lot of conversations about trust. How do we do that? I know you said transparency, right? But what else is it about empowering that internal engine and the trust engine that we know high performance teams are what we need, right? What, tell us a little bit more. I'd love to learn more about what you're thinking there.
I think it's connected with your idea about like failure. When you allow yourself to show to other team members, to your team, to some common teams that you could fail you and you could like say, yeah, we did not great. It relaxing. And other team also could say, okay, I won't do this product till this deadline because he also could allow himself to show this failure. And then I won't promise it to our customers that we will launch this product till this date. Yeah. And I think it's important to show to all your like team members that, okay, yeah, we all fail you, but we all work for some like a mutual goal. Let's think how to deal with that. In that atmosphere, like they all other teams, they also will be more transparent for you because you don't say to your CEO that, oh, this team isn't ready before your like big event with this product. Okay, we are not ready. Okay, we will announce that we are planning to do it next year, not on the specific date. And yeah, sometimes when you already announce it, some of your team members knows that it won't be at this date. And it's better for all of you to be on one page and yeah, and to understand what's really going on there.
Again, on that kind of like the front of failure, we have to know that it's okay for us to fail and we're not going to get in trouble if we were really honestly trying. There's this term that's been thrown around called psychological safety. And if I have the feeling that I'm going to be safe and I'm actually rewarded for trying and failing, but picking myself up and contributing in ways that push the envelope. Right? We can't innovate. We can't try new and incredible things without failing every once in a while. And it's important for our teams to understand that. And then our customers too. We tried really hard. This time it didn't work out too well, but we're going to keep trying. Does that term psychological safety, does that mean something?
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I think your customer will trust you more when you could open say that, yeah, we failed. Yeah. And because, for example, when yours, a brand say it's blue and 10 person in chat say no, it's green, they all will understand that you are lying.
So here, let me take this into kind of a new direction because everything that we're talking about, you could put it under one bucket and say it all contributes to the experience that we're creating for our customers, right? And how we internally align directly relates to the experience that we're creating. And you could look at McKinsey studies, Deloitte studies that talk about how customer experience is the number one differentiator in the market today. Right? Like you said earlier, like product superiority, if you're a technology company, like this feature, this benefit, that's not long-term sustainable, right? ChatGPT is writing code these days. So the customer experience is really this foundation. And you talked about achieving like synchronization in systems and KPIs and having a harmony between that systemization and the customer experience itself. And I'd love to hear more what you were thinking about.
Yeah, you know that it's interesting that I am working in e-commerce. It's not like one-way purchase. It's not like some B2B customer could buy once and then just to switch to another company. It's more about investing their time. So their time and their resources are limited. And there are a lot of like e-commerce platforms around the world. And it's all about their resources. Their resources are limited and they need to choose the partners where to invest these resources. And it's like everyday choice. It's not something you have chosen like someday and you live with it. It's like everyday choice. You every day, every month, every quarter have some limited resources and you're thinking what e-commerce platform will be next for this quarter, for this day. And for high season, now it's coming high season and their product, their attention, their money also restricted before this high season. And if we failed one high season, it's like November, it's the highest season for us, like 11/11, Black Friday. If we fail one season, the next season they will choose another platform because they have these limited resources. And for us, even if we fail this season, for example, it's very important to say we understand why we failed. We did this and this and this, and it could help us to switch his opinion and to believe us one more time. But it can't work every year.
So it's the kind of thing where it's hard for us to sometimes remember one bad experience can turn a customer off for life. We can lose a customer with one bad experience. But it's like my wife used to say when we were raising our kids, and she was like, it takes 10 attaboys to counteract one, hey, you did something wrong. Like, no, you can't do that. Like, they remember that. Our customers, they remember the negative experiences. We keep a tally in our minds, right? But we tend to, forget about, we have to have this wave of customer experience that keeps them in with us. And that harmony, when you were talking about it, it almost felt like was a continual machine of great experiences that we could never let up on. As soon as we let up on that, we're going to have the one experience where we can't overcome. And so systematizing this, like you talked about when systems aren't synchronized, like what are the systems that you think are the most important? Like when you're thinking about systems internally, what does that mean for you?
Oh, yeah. For me, it's all about communication. It's all about leading. It's all about one leader who like create this atmosphere of trust or maybe not trust. And it's all about the communication. For me, it's all about communication. This internal trust, this external trust, it's all about people and their communication. And of course, you can't do it only by yourself. And I like companies where you could find the same profile as me when you're ready to some open communication and so on. And when your separate KPI is not the main reason why you're doing something, when some big picture, the bigger goal is more important that your today KPI as a team, as a person, and so on. So for me, of course, it's some orienting to some one mutual goal is important. Yeah.
Let me ask you, I'm gonna kind of step away right now and take a little bit of a different direction. You operate on a global basis, right? And you operate in local markets, regional markets, global markets, and you have to balance kind of innovations, how you bring things to the market and through your local sellers. And how do you maintain everything we've been talking about here? Maintaining trust. That's a really broad, complex ecosystem that you're working in. How do you take the levers of trust and customer voice, right? And focusing internally on transparency. And how does that map across the world in all these different sub organizations and groups and sellers and things like that?
Yeah, yeah. First, I will try to describe our system. So we're like Russian corporate. We have our local business, our e-commerce in Russia and CIS countries. We're one of the biggest marketplace in CIS. We have a lot of local sellers. Of course, we started with these local sellers, and now it's like our core business. It's sales from CIS to CIS. It's like our core business. Our international operations, like we as Ozon Global, we try to attract sellers abroad from China, Turkey, Dubai, some European countries, and so on. So we started 4 years ago when we was a small as a small startup in this huge corporation. So we were like less than percent of all our revenue. And of course, these first 2 years were the most difficult because everyone said, it's your Chinese garbage. Or you waste my main page, you waste my search, and so on. It was perception that we were coming to this ideal product with some of our garbage. Yeah. And we tried to spoil this ideal product. And the perception was like that. But then we were growing, 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 and now we're like sufficient part of all revenue. And of course, the perception from central business different now. And of course, for example, for some commercial operation, for example, fashion category, they also interested in our sellers because our sellers also their KPI. For like some electronic category, they understand for some categories we made like half of their revenue. And of course, the attitude different now. And of course, I also go through this path together with my business unit because first 2 years it was difficult to persuade people that it's important for our business, that it's like our mutual future, that our business now, okay, it's stable, but we need to grow in this field as well. Because if we don't, our competitors will. And of course, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was much more difficult for me to build this transparency because our business was so miserable. And it was fight every day for some resources, for some attention, and so on. And of course, now it's easier because now it's more transparent for all other internal teams that we are like the growing point of the company. We are growing fast and we're attracting more assortment, we're attracting more ads revenue because our sellers spend money to be more higher on some search rank and so on. And we attract this money now for company. And of course, attitude is different. And of course, it's like absolutely two different strategy how to negotiate with this small startup inside the big corporation and how to communicate now when you have so significant business. And of course now it's easier because like practically every team member understand that we are this growing point for the whole business, for some commercial industries, for ad revenue department, for all businesses. And now, of course, it's easier. They also understand that we are working on one goal. But 3 years ago, it was difficult to communicate anything to your clients when you understand that maybe I won't do anything for them. We never overpromised. We never overpromised. Like 4 years ago, we said we will translate your personal account, and it was great for us. Now it sounds crazy when we're so big business with so many sellers. But 3 years ago, we just okay. We adopted your personal account for your needs. Yeah, and we didn't promise a lot.
The big thing that I'm taking away from what you just said there is that we're good at planning external communication programs, right? Demand gen programs, thought leadership programs. But what I took away is that you have to have a communication program internally. Right? You got to sell your value internally. And if you're not, then the leadership isn't going to understand what you're doing, resource you. We got to be advocates. We got to be sellers internally for ourselves. The other different departments that we have to work with, we have to bring together the service offering. If we're not creating that internal communication program, then we're missing some of the biggest opportunity for growth, right? And for accomplishing what we need to accomplish. It's back to kind of we need the internal team. We need to engage internally our employees, the different departments, our leadership. That's all part of an advocacy internal program. Is that like a good takeaway overall from what you were saying?
Yeah, it's great. And I think that it's important for marketing person, for salesperson to be deep involved in all like product in business. And when you deep involved, when you understand by your side, you understand some restriction. Even don't need to ask, you understand why you could promise or can't promise anything because you understand how business works and do I have some restriction here now or not? And for me, it's easy because I deep understand like the whole business process, how our logistic works, how like central business works. And sometimes I even don't need to synchronize in this particular message because I understand restriction without asking.
We've talked about so much. We've covered a lot of territory here. But if there were one thing that you wanted the audience that's going to consume this podcast to take away, your peers, the C-suite executives, the leaders in organizations that are listening in, if there was one thing that you wanted to make sure that they took away from our podcast today, what would that be?
I think it's also about to speak about your failures or directly and honest. It doesn't matter. It's like the conversation with your internal team or conversation with your clients, like all business value. It's like all business value. And you need just to be very transparent communicating about it. Yeah. If you do it, it will gives more trust, even if you fail more often than your competitors. It's very important how you deal with it, how you communicate. And it's not only about value, but about understanding how it damage your partner's business, what you will do to correct it, and how it influence your partnership later, and what will you do to fix it. It's like not only failure.
Well, here's what I do know. People are going to have questions. Is it okay if I give out like a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out and ask you questions?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Well, I have to say, Alena, the goal, the mission of this podcast is to bring different perspectives from different leaders from all over the world that have had different experiences, different insights, different perspectives. And if we can all share to how we grow our businesses from our own points of view, then that's like the rising tide that lifts all boats. And thank you for being an important part of that rising tide today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for opportunity to share.